Hi everyone and welcome to another video from dispairrepair.com. In this video we'll be talking about how to inspect the engine of a used car. If you're thinking about buying a used car, this is, besides inspecting the car body, the most important inspection that you can make on that used car before buying it. It is immensely important. If you buy a car with a bad engine, you're in for big trouble, big repairs and big costs. So hopefully this video will help avoid that. Stay tuned.
dispairrepair.com. Be sure to visit us at our website dispairrepair.com, where you can find more useful car and driving tips.
Before we start, I would just like to say as a disclaimer that this is again sort of a amateur look at the engine. The point of this video and two previous videos is to prepare you and tell you as an amateur and as a buyer what you should look at to avoid problems. Lots of huge serious problems can be easily recognized on time and you should avoid then buying that car. Okay, that's the whole point of it, to save your hard-earned money and for you to buy a good car. This is an amateur check of the engine. The real deal, if you really decide to buy the car, you've done all the checks, everything is okay, everything is fine, and do this especially if you're buying a more expensive used car, more high-end car, more, super tech car, then go and drive it to a service or a garage that has all the needed instruments, that has the lift and everything else, and make a detailed inspection. Now, once you raise the hood of the car, this is what you'll be up against. What you want to see is a condition that is closest to when the car came from the factory as possible. If you see any kind of missing plastics, missing lids, if you see that it's all messy and not being taken care of properly, you should raise the alarm. Regarding dust, mud, or any other kind of filthy engine bays and engines, okay? Take this into consideration and remember this. Lots of people do not like to wash the engine, okay? They just leave the engine bay as it is. What you really want to see is an engine that has sort of a layer of dust, perhaps, some mud from the road, not big chunks of mud, but a small film on it. It may have cobwebs if the car hasn't been driven for a long time, but the main point is that you want to see a dry and engines with signs of usage. For instance, this car has over 200,000 kilometers on it and the signs of usage correlate with that. What you want to avoid is a shiny and very cleaned up engine bay, okay? Of course, there are people who like that their engine bay is clean and everything is okay, but if you see that the engine bay has been freshly washed with a pressure washer, because lots of people do this before selling the car, be aware. Why is this? Lots of people pressure wash the engine bay. They do it in very good detail. There are companies who do this very good. The owners do this to hide traces of oil leaks, especially coolant leaks, past fuel leaks, and everything else, okay? So if you see a real shined up engine bay, and especially if the owner used all kinds of cosmetic sprays to make the plastic look better, be aware of this also. Now, on this part, before you take off the engine cover, we'll talk about that later, there are a couple of things you can check. First of all, check the battery and the condition of the battery. We'll show you how to do that. Next, you will take off the oil cap and do a simple inspection. Check the oil level, and you can check the oil quality level to some extent, and check the coolant bottle. Besides this, you can also check the brake fluid container. Now, first, regarding the battery, in this case, you can take the lid off and take a look at the battery, and this is pretty much what you want to see. Everything is clean. There is no green and yellow residue on the battery poles. This is a battery in a good condition, but this is just the visual inspection. What you want to ask the previous owner is to give you a guarantee for the battery and to see the expiry date. This is very important, since if the battery is near its end, you're in for buying a new battery, and that costs a hefty sum of money. Next, proceed to checking the oil level. So take out the dipstick like this and take a look at the oil. What you want to see is an engine oil that has the color of honey, this is a good example. The oil is due for change, so it's pretty dark. Okay, so you can see the difference. Now we've wiped the dipstick. We're gonna put it back. Gonna wait for a couple of seconds, and then we'll pull the dipstick out. Now I hope you can see this. The oil level is between minimum and maximum. What you want to see is a normal oil level. The oil should be the color of honey. If you see that there isn't enough oil or that there's too much oil, that could be a sign of trouble. Also, although this is hard to do, check the oil for traces of metal particles. Put it against the sunlight or against a strong source of light, and if there are any metal particles or very small shavings, you may be able to see it. If you see any of this, this is big trouble and best stay away from that car. Now we'll put the dipstick back in. Next, take off the oil cap like this, and what you want to see is this normal black residue. Okay, these are a bit of oil vapors, nothing problematic. Here in case of the Skoda, there is this extension for the filler neck. It's just dirt, nothing dangerous. But the point is, you want to see that there are no traces of any kind of sludge here, especially if you see white sludge. It looks like some sort of white pudding, you know, white slime, and if you see any traces of that, there might have been probably head gasket problems, and that engine was in trouble, and you should stay away from it. Also, if you have the possibility, look inside through the hole, and if you see any traces of sludge, any traces of muck inside the engine, if you see those white traces again, then you should stay away from that engine. Now, regarding the oil cap, there is another popular test that people do. What they do is, while the engine is running, they take off the oil cap and let it sit on the engine while it's running. If the cap jumps around like this while the engine is running, that is considered a bad engine because there is a lot of blow-by coming from here. It is considered that the piston rings are bad, the cylinder walls are bad. The other thing that people do is that while the engine is running, they put their hand on this hole. This is not convenient with the Skoda engine cover, but they put their hand on this hole and then ask the owner to rev the engine. If there is any vacuum pulling your hand seriously, or if there is any pressure pushing your hand from the hole, then that is also considered a problem. On this part, I must say that I've seen engines where this check is not very accurate. Some engines have a design that even when they're new, there is certain pressure coming from here, so the engine is okay, everything is fine, the compression test checks out, but there is some pressure coming out from here. So if you like, you can do it, it's your choice. Now, what you can do while the engine is cold is to check the coolant bottle. This is a very important check and it can tell you lots of things. So open the coolant bottle. Now, what you want to see is a coolant color that is transparent and clear. If you see any traces of oil or sludge on the sides of the coolant bottle, that's a bad sign and probably a sign that there was a blown head gasket or a leaking head gasket in the past. And you should probably stay away from that engine. The next thing you should check is the level of the coolant. It should be ideally between minimum and maximum. If it's not, it may be a sign that the previous owner is not diligent and hasn't checked the coolant, but it can also be a sign of leaking coolant somewhere. So pay attention to that also. Now, in case of the Skoda, the main brake cylinder and the brake fluid reservoir is near the battery. I don't know if you can see this. You want to check the level of the brake fluid. There's a minimum and maximum gauge right there. What you want to see is that the brake fluid container has enough brake fluid inside of it. One other thing you should check is the main brake cylinder. It's connected to the servo for the brakes, okay, the brake booster. And if you see any kind of leaks here, then there might be some sort of problem and future repairs. So if everything is dry here and close to factory condition, then that's okay. Now, one more thing you can check, and perhaps on some cars this is much easier to check when the engine cover is off, is to check the steering wheel rack. Now on the Skoda you can go behind the battery box and go under the main brake cylinder, and you can see the steering rack to some extent. Check if there are any leaks or any moisture, filth and dirt, that's normal. But if you see any kind of oil moisture or leak, that can be a sign of future problems. Right down there, everything is dry, nice. You can see a sticker from the factory, so that pretty much checks out okay. Again, if you see any kind of moisture or leaks, that could be a problem. Now, after you've done these checks, you can check the space around the engine bay, okay? It's a convenient thing to do. What I would recommend doing is to check the connections between the fenders, the bumper. So as you can see here, with the Skoda, everything is in factory condition. The screws are not touched. Pay attention to the screws there. If you see that they are tampered with, if there's missing paint, then that's probably a sign that the fender has been changed and maybe the car was in an accident. What you want to see with this part here is that it is intact, that there are no signs of hammering, touching. You want to see factory paint on it, these factory stickers. If you see any signs of tampering with this and that there was some kind of work, the car was probably in an accident. Now, in case of the Skoda, you can also take a look at the radiator while you're at it. See if there are any physical damages on it. Was it hit? Was it tampered with? Here you can again see there's only cobwebs, but it is pretty much in a good state. Now, regarding the fender, take a look at the seams around here, see that everything is okay. This fender had a paint job done on it. It's pretty good, not bad. If you see this, ask the owner what the problem was. Also, if you see a broken fender, broken plastics, or some kind of tampering with, know that that car has probably been in some kind of trouble or in maybe a mild collision. It doesn't have to be a big problem, but ask about it. Another thing, if you see damaged rubber seals like this one, or missing parts of the seal, if you see any of these plastic clips missing, if you see that this plastic has been broken or damaged, if you see that this seal around the windshield has been tampered with, maybe a sign that the windshield has been taken off or replaced, which is also a sign that something has been done. All in all, again, on this part, as said many times in this video, what you want to see is a factory condition. There may be signs of material fatigue, but what you want is that there is nothing missing and that there is no physical damage. Once you're finished with this preliminary check, and before taking off the engine cover, take a look at the engine from under the car. What you want to see is a dry engine, no oil or coolant leaks, and preferably all of the plastic protective covers should be in place. Make sure that there is no physical damage to the oil pan, and while you're at it, also take a look at the exhaust system, transmission, suspension system, whatever your eye can catch. Any signs of leaks, damage, recent welding, fresh sealant or else are all signs that you need to raise the alarm. Dear viewer, I'm sorry for interrupting this video, but unexpectedly the whole video about checking the engine of a used car lasts 25 minutes or more, I think. We've decided, because of that, to split it into two parts. The first part will be how to make the inspection with the engine cover on, and the second part will be when you take off the engine cover and make a thorough inspection. This was sort of a logical border between these two parts, since sometimes you can check the engine with even taking off the engine cover. You can see some sort of problem and avoid further inspection. To make things clear, in most cases, once you get the hang of this, the whole inspection lasts about 4 or 5 minutes, okay, 10 minutes at most. So you'll get to the engine bay, see this, see that, are there any leaks, is anything missing, and you'll get a pretty good idea very soon. Also, I would ask of you to watch the other part. In it you can see the finale of it all, when the engine is started, what you should listen to, what you should look at and everything else. And after watching both of these parts, you'll get a complete picture of what you're supposed to look at, how you're supposed to make this sort of amateur inspection and save yourself from trouble. Again, as mentioned in the conclusion of the second part, the last thing you want to do is buy a car with a bad engine. Or what you'll essentially buy is a heap of useless junk if you do that. I must also add that, at least in my country, the realm of used cars and the market of used cars is riddled with traps, with very good and polished cars, hidden problems, hidden big troubles, expensive troubles, and if you fall into that trap, there's no one to pay for the mistake but you. More than once have I seen that people buy a car that they really like, it looks really good, even to a professional eye it's hard to find the problem, only for the engine to go bust after 3,000 or 4,000 miles. And then either you have to do a complete engine overhaul, which is massively expensive, or you have to change the complete engine. Thank you for watching, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next part.